Welcome to the Better Together podcast, where we look for ways we can work together to advance the gospel of Jesus Christ. Today, I have with us Ethan McCraney. You may know him. He's a new missionary to Cadence International, and his hope is to do what he can to minister to and to serve and to reach people in the military community. He's the son of Free Will Baptist Navy chaplain Mark McCraney, which many of you know and have been praying for throughout the years. And so, Ethan, it's just so good to have you here today, my friend.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
So, you've got quite a story when we were talking a little bit about this ministry that you're trying to get into, but tell us a little bit about how God prepared you for this ministry with this group that we'll talk about in a bit called Cadence International. What's
Absolutely.
happened along the way to kind of uniquely prepare you for this?
Absolutely. Well, I've been fortunate to be born into a Christian family. My dad, my granddad, and my great grandfather were all pastors. And so I kind of grew up in the ministry and got to see a little bit of the behind the scenes of that. And I think that has really helped shape my view of what ministry can look like in many different ways. Another unique experience was that we actually were church planners. My family and I were church planners in Colorado, which again gave me another facet of what ministry can look like. I think God has used both the traditional ministry that we had in Alabama and the kind of out of the box thinking that we had in Colorado to prepare me for the next phase, which was when my dad decided to rejoin the military as a chaplain. That is a different world in and of itself.
Yes.
Um, Colorado is very interesting because it's very secular in many ways, which I think prepared us for when we rejoined the military, going into a entirely different secular culture.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so being able to experience that and kind of see how do we minister to people that we may not agree with theologically, because the other aspect of that is within the military context, there's no denominations. It
Mm-hmm.
is Protestant, Catholic, or other. And so, how do we approach ministry from a gospel centered focus rather than a denominational focus?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Not to mention, while we were overseas, we actually encountered Cadence. And so, getting to experience that ministry and be a part of it firsthand helped shape me and bring me to this point. In fact, jumping ahead a little bit, the Cadence missionaries there were actually the ones who helped me answer the call to ministry.
Okay. Wow. So, yeah, let's jump ahead a little bit. So you were really a military kid.
Mhm.
You were overseas in a different kind of situation, really in a different culture. So, talk to our listeners a little bit because that'll be a good international or a good introduction to Cadence International.
Absolutely. So obviously, being from Alabama, both sets of my grandparents live there. We like to stay close to family and we like to visit them whenever we can. Moving to Colorado made things tough, but most Christmases we would still make it back to visit family and spend the holidays together. However, when you move overseas, it gets a lot trickier and a lot more expensive to try and come back to the States every year. And so, more often than not, we just simply couldn't. Um, so, naturally, we were looking for some kind of community while we were overseas. And that's how we first encountered Cadence. Um, Cadence, what they do is they get plugged into the chapel community. And so, the missionaries that were part of Cadence there were actually heavily involved in our chapel, helping run sound, helping to do Sunday school. They even helped run the VBS program during the summer, organized everything with that. Um, and so then we started to get very involved with them. We'd go over to their house. They started a youth group because our youth pastor left right after we got there. So they started a youth group out of their house, and I became heavily involved in the ministry, serving whenever I could, attending every meeting. And ultimately, the Nate Johnson is the name of the missionary who was there. He kind of took me under his wing and started to mentor me and disciple me, which is again another big thing for Cadence.
Mm-hmm. So
So,
that's what got you involved. You were a military kid, and
yes, sir.
the Cadence International ministered to you, and
Hmm.
you started feeling maybe God's calling me into this. I should mention you have an article called "A New Cadence" that's going to be in the June July issue of One Magazine that we encourage people to look at. You alluded this a little bit, like not being able to go home and what that
Hmm.
was like. But in the article, you talk about third culture kids. So
Yes, sir.
sounds like Cadence does a good job of ministering to third culture kids. Why don't you explain to our listeners a little bit about what third culture kids are and their kind of needs?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So a third culture kid is a child that has spent at least part, if not all of their childhood in at least one country or culture other than that of their own parents, or their own culture. Uh, they never fully assimilate into any culture. And essentially, what's cool, third culture kids have kind of formed their own subculture. We can It's almost like a superpower. We can spot each other a mile away and start forming that friendship immediately. Um, it's not necessarily a new phenomenon, but it's one that's been recently recognized. I think as early as the 20th century. That's really when people started to study it. Um, Now, I meant the name third culture kids comes from the fact that there's three cultures. There's your home or passport country or culture. There's the host culture or country that you're living in. And then there's the way of life that you and your family develop that doesn't really fit into either culture neatly. And so that's where the term third culture kids comes from. Um,
And so, military kids, especially, sometimes missionary kids would
absolutely.
be like this. And a listener
Absolutely.
may say, well, whoop de doo, what's the big deal? As a third culture kid and you experience it, it's a big deal, isn't it?
Absolutely.
To
Absolutely.
explain a bit about like when you go to a school for the first time and all of that.
Yeah. So the fun thing about going to a school for the first time is you get asked the two most dreaded questions. Where are you from? And where's home?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Personally, I've started responding to those questions with, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I am thoroughly and completely confused on what home is, what the concept of home is, as well as where I'm from. Most oftentimes, a third culture kid will respond to that question with, well, do you mean where I was born? Or do you mean where I lived last? Or do you mean where I live now? Or where I'm going to next? Like there has to be some sort of specification in order for us to be able to answer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to me, home has become the more so about the people and the emotional connections I have with them rather than a place.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that lack of a home, that lack of a place to identify yourself to tie yourself to, is really disheartening and really really discouraging in a lot of
Mm-hmm.
ways.
So, and it sounds like it's pretty lonely. It
Absolutely.
sounds like when you say people ask you the question that they're almost sizing you up, like, do I get to know you? Are you going to be around
Hmm.
long enough? So,
Hmm.
what you're saying is third culture kids, it's a lot of
Hmm.
challenges they have to overcome.
Absolutely. Some of the challenges are confused loyalties. You
Mm-hmm.
know, which culture do I belong to? Who do I identify the most with? Oftentimes, and I've seen this from missionary kids that I've known and other military kids that I've known, there's an ignorance of their own home culture. Many times if people spend many years outside of the United States, they miss out on a lot of cultural things that happen or cultural events. And so they're completely blindsided whenever they come back and learn, well, it used to be this way, but now it's a completely different way. Um, there's there's a lot of a lack of cultural balance. There's You tend to lean one way more than the other, but oftentimes it's not the culture that you were born into or you don't fully ascribe to. Um, there's a lot of challenges that go along with it. But
Hmm.
I don't want it to sound like it's all challenges. There are a lot of benefits.
Hmm.
One of the things that I've noticed, at least in myself, is I've gained an expanded worldview,
Hmm.
almost like a three-dimensional view of the world. It's not just places on a map. There's people that live in these places, and they have their own homes and their own families and their own traditions. They have relationships with one another, and so it kind of brings a unifying aspect to the rest of the world. Um, Being a third culture kid has truly shaped the way I view the gospel as well,
Hmm.
and has really pointed me towards, I believe it's Revelation 7, where all the nations are together singing, Holy, Holy, Holy in heaven. And it makes me excited for that day. One of my favorite experiences that I consider myself blessed to have had, when we were living in Spain, I got to go to a gypsy church, or Roma, as they call them, as they prefer to be called. And it was such, I don't know that I have felt closer to God than when I was in that worship service, hearing people sing in English and in Spanish and just pouring out their hearts in worship, uh, knowing that we all serve the same God.
Hmm. That's great. So, yes, there's challenges to being a third culture kid. You've experienced it. There's also needs which you're trying to meet through Cadence International, and we'll talk about that in a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also opportunities. It's kind of like they say you have to hear a certain language by a certain age to ever be able to speak it without
Right,
accent.
right.
You have to probably have been in different cultures as a third culture kid has to be able to do some of the things you're talking about, really identify
Mm-hmm.
what
Absolutely.
it's like in this part of the world. So there's opportunities, there's also challenges. Um, you have set out, or you've made it a ministry now. You're going to try to minister to these kids, right? And that's what
Mm-hmm.
International is really all about.
Yeah, the kids, the families, we're very holistic in our approach. We want to serve our service members, but we want to focus on the families as well, because oftentimes the families are the ones that are forgotten.
Mm-hmm. So, talk to us a little bit about that. What is it that you're doing? Like, for example, go ahead and where will you be, and what kinds of
Hmm.
activities will you be doing with these, especially the children of these service personnel, to try to help them
Absolutely,
this?
absolutely. Well, as of right now, I do not know where I will be sent. Cadence operates like the military in many aspects, where we get assigned locations.
Uh-huh.
Now, we do get some input into that, which is helpful. Um, and so I can answer in part that we will be stateside for the first year.
Okay.
My fiance is getting her master's in counseling, and the last thing she has to do to get her degree is an internship.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the internship cannot be done outside of the US or on a military base. So we do know that we will be stateside for the first year. After that, the world's our oyster. We could be
There
sent
you
anywhere. When it comes to specific ministry things, I want to talk about something that we use at Cadence called the Cadence Way.
go. Mm-hmm.
Um, and it is 5 steps that we kind of use to describe what our ministry looks like. So the first one is that we stay. Now, the military community is one that is constantly shifting and changing, and it's always on the move. I think the statistic I read was that over a 20-year career span, a service member will move on average 18 times.
Mm.
That is a lot. I know me personally, I have never lived in the same location for more than 4 years. Um, so it's difficult to constantly be on the move. And so with Cadence, we try to be that stable, consistent presence across all the installations that we serve. We want to be that stable force that people can rely on and that they can count on in a constantly mobile community. The next thing that we do is we serve. Cadence is all about servant leadership and service as a ministry. we describe our ministry as hospitality ministry. And so we've been able to cultivate a proven reputation of serving military personnel and their families, but especially chaplains.
Mhm.
We've been able to do this over the past 70 years. We want to focus especially on our chaplains because they're how we get access to the base, and we want to make sure that we make their lives as easy as possible. So that way we can help build that community there in the chapel. The next thing that we do is that we shape. We are all about building sustainable, biblical, life changing fellowships within the military community. And so, what this looks like practically is I mentioned that we serve in the chapel, but we also have at least 1 to 2 ministry nights a week where we invite people over to our houses, do home cooked meals, fellowship, and we do Bible studies and we dig into the word and we share the gospel on a regular basis. But we are all about discipleship as well. Discipleship is a huge, huge, huge part of what we do and who we are. We want to make sure that we're not just leading people to Christ, but helping them grow in their relationship with Him and continue to flourish in that. The next thing that we do is that we send. Now, I mentioned that the military community is a mobile community. Some would even say nomadic, which means that we have to say goodbye a lot. However, whenever we say goodbye, it's almost as if we're sending out our own missionaries to other installations that we may not have access to yet, which I think is just a cool way to exponentially grow the kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
The last thing that we do is that we strive. Military ministry is all that Cadence does, and we've been doing it for 70 years now. It is our passion, it is our joy, and we're not planning on stopping anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when it comes to the children of our service members, Cadence, along with having a focused adult ministry, also has a dedicated children's ministry wing and a youth ministry wing. So I mentioned when we were in Rhoda, uh, the Cadence missionaries there started a youth ministry out of their house, and they ran it for several months. But eventually, Cadence sent a youth pastor and his wife to pair up with the missionaries there and sort of take over that youth ministry. And it was really cool because we got to watch the hospitality house there become more of a holistic ministry rather than just segmented parts.
So that is very exciting. And it sounds to me, Ethan, like you were uniquely prepared for this. I don't know if, well, I'm sure God can call any of us in any
Absolutely.
different circumstances, but knowing what
Hmm.
it's like to move, not living
Hmm.
the same place for more than 4 years, you understand a lot of what they're going through, and
Hmm.
kind of have adapted to that life. So I'm excited about it. I know our listeners are excited about it too. You'll be a year it's stateside, but we've got military bases all over the United States. And
Absolutely.
then you can go, you call it the world is your oyster. So that's a cool thing too. You can go anywhere. We have military
Yes, sir.
bases. How can folks support you and how can they help you to get going as quickly as possible?
Absolutely. Well, the biggest way is through prayer. Um, Nothing of significance can be accomplished apart from God. And I am asking that each and every one of our listeners here today would partner with me through prayer as I'm continuing to raise support for this, as my fiance and I get married next March. And as we both move to the field together to start on this mission that God has given us. But I'm also in the process of raising support. There are financial needs. And the easiest way to support me that way is to go to the Cadence website, go to cadence.org slash McCraney, McCraney. If you go there, you get to see a little bio of me. There's a little picture of me right there. And at the top of the page, there's a Give Now button that you can click and set up donations. Um, anything is greatly appreciated, but I'm honored that I would even have the opportunity to come on here and share with you guys about this mission that God has given me.
Well,
Um,
we're just so happy about what you're doing, Ethan, and I'll remind our listeners that check out the June, July 2025 edition of One Magazine. There's a good picture of you there.
Mm-hmm.
The Cadence International Ministry to the Military, and you talk about this a little bit more. By the way, the link there is also, they can go and
Yes, sir.
link and go online and check that out too. But we're excited about this ministry, and especially it's kind of full circle, really has, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It really is. It didn't make sense on the journey, but now looking back, I can see God's providence in bringing me to this point. It's been cool to look back, and it makes me excited for the future to be able to look back again and kind of see how the road twisted and turned, but got me to where I needed to be.
Before I let you go, I feel like I would be erring if I did not say, what comes to your mind quickly about what churches can do to support our military families? Some of them would be close to bases, but you experienced that firsthand because your dad's a chaplain and you guys are in different places. What comes to your mind that they might be able to do?
The biggest thing that I can think of is providing a sense of community,
Mm-hmm.
providing a space where people can come and feel welcomed and loved and feel a part of the family, the family of Christ, but just a family in general. Um, like I said, the military community is a mobile community, which means that you learn to pack light. Oftentimes, that means you sell a lot of things. That means you leave behind a lot of things. And so, uh, another thing that I immediately thought of was possibly starting some sort of supply closet for
Mm-hmm.
whenever people transfer into the base. Um, Oftentimes, whenever you move, your home goods get shipped in and don't arrive for at least another month or two after you arrive. So anything like pots or pans or sheets or blankets for beds or anything like that don't arrive until that shipment arrives.
Mm-hmm.
But those are things you need from day
Yeah,
one.
absolutely.
Um, so anything practical like that would also be really, really helpful.
That's great. So sounds like, first of all, think about, it's kind of hard to fit in. You've been out of the culture, and
Hmm. Hmm.
when you're in the culture, you don't notice how much it's changed in 3 years, but it's
Right.
to somebody outside. And then
Hmm.
the practical needs,
Hmm.
stuff will not arrive for for several weeks,
Right.
So having those things on board, that's great, great information. I appreciate that a lot, Ethan. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well,
Thank
buddy,
you.
thank you for joining us today. So remember, check out
Absolutely.
Ethan's article in One Magazine. Remember, cadence.org/missionary/Ethan McCraney. Uh, Anything you give would be greatly appreciated. And remember to pray for him, pray for his fiance as she does her internship, that God takes them and blesses them. Thank you, Ethan, so much, buddy.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Moody. I appreciate it.
You bet, buddy. We want our listeners to remember every little thing we do. It really does count. It really does matter. And when we come together and we work together, we truly are better together. Thank you for joining us today.